So we have an update on the Walter Scott story. This is the 50-year-old African-American gentleman in South Carolina who was shot from behind by Officer Michael Slager. That trial was happening, and we have a juror in that trial who is saying that he cannot convict Slager for murder or manslaughter. He just will not do it, and right now they are considering a mistrial because of that. Now, in case you never saw this footage, I want to show it to you now. Look, if you're understandably squeamish about this stuff, you might not want to see it because somebody's about to get murdered. And to what appears to be most rational human beings, what you're about to see is murder. But that's what they're trying to decide here, and one person apparently thinks it's not even manslaughter. So the cop had pulled him over, and then he was questioning him. Walter Scott made a mistake, no question about it. He decided to run away. He shouldn't have tried to run away. But that doesn't give Officer Slager the right to shoot him from behind, which is what you'll see in this video.
I'm at the Rivers in there, pawn shop. Where you at now? 223, just got shots fired. Subject is down. You grab my taser.
This is 223, shots fired. He grabs your taser. Subject is down at 938.
34 copies on the route.
93-4, 938.
.241's in the area. I'm attempting to locate him.
Okay, so there are many disturbing parts of that tape. We broke it down for you guys when that story first broke, and you see him in the tape dropping the taser next to Michael Scott later, because you heard him there saying he tried to grab my taser, and he didn't know that he was being recorded by someone else, obviously on the other side of the fence, and so no, it appears Michael Scott did not grab his taser. He planted the taser next to him to pretend that there was a scuffle over it, and you saw him very calmly shooting Walter Scott from behind. So now, obviously, a lot of people are upset that for the moment being, Michael Slager looks like is not going to receive the justice that a lot of people thought he should based on that evidence. Now, people are also noticed that the jury was 6 white men, 5 white women, and 1 black man. So now it's supposed to be a jury of your peers. Michael Slager's white, Walter Scott was black. I don't know what conclusion that leads you to, and it depends on where you have the trial. And we don't know the race or the politics of the juror who will not bend on this issue. For example, it is theoretically possible that it's a liberal who says, no, I'm a stickler for the law, and the prosecutor did not do its job of giving you overwhelming evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't know. Or it could be the opposite, right? Nah, the cop's got a tough job, and sometimes he should just shoot people in the back and kill them. It's hard to know. But by the way, now on the racial issue, all the other jurors, who are almost all white, are saying they're ready to convict. They said that's, to them, it seems abundantly clear as it does to the rest of the country. So if you're upset about the one juror, also remember the other jurors. And the other jurors are like, I see it. Everybody sees it with their own eyes. So earlier in the week, the judge has said, I allow the prosecutors to charge manslaughter as well. So murder is a much heavier charge than manslaughter. So he's like, okay, fine, you can consider manslaughter. They go back, and the one juror is like, nope, not even manslaughter. No, nothing at all, perfectly innocent.
So this story broke right before we went on air, and I would like to be able to look into this. But there was a federal court that ruled cops are not allowed to, a suspect running from you is not enough reasonable doubt or probable cause, I should say, right? So just the fact that a suspect or someone is running away from you is not enough for you to even stop that person and ask questions.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was a ruling that just happened.
That was a ruling that just happened. So the reason why I bring that up is because obviously in this case, it's not even involving a cop trying to stop someone and ask them questions because they're running away. It involves a cop who just shoots someone literally 5 times as they run away, which proves that that person did not pose an imminent threat to the police official. And then the fact that he planted evidence shows that the cop knew what he was doing was wrong. Otherwise, he wouldn't plant the evidence, right? So,
And-
like, what's I don't know what's holding this juror up, but what does that ruling mean for this case, if it means anything at all?
So there's the more relevant one. They say Anna gives you that example because to show you how extreme this is. But the question is, what is the standard for shooting someone who's running away from you? And the standard is you have to think that either your life is in imminent danger or someone else's life is in imminent danger for you to shoot at a guy running away from you, okay? Now, Walter Scott did not have a gun. So that is absolutely clear. There's no question about that. The taser was planted. You see it in the video, right? And then they broke that down in court even more thoroughly than the short video we just showed you. And he was shot in the back. So the juror must have thought, that guy still looks like a danger to me. Like that Walter Scott could have killed someone imminently, so that the officer had no choice but to shoot him and kill him on the spot and shoot him in the back. So now, look, a lot of people in the country are going to be upset, saying, like, is there anything that a cop can do where he would be convicted? Or can you kill anyone, or maybe any black person, and get away with it under any and all circumstances if you're a cop? And it's a fair question. It's a fair question.
I also just want to note that body camera surveillance is not the answer to stopping what we're seeing throughout the country, right? This video is as clear as it could possibly be, right, in terms of what occurred during the shooting. And it still wasn't enough evidence. Like there could possibly be a mistrial as a result of this one juror. So we need to think, more comprehensively about how we want to address this problem. And it has to do with the way we train police. It has to do with, maybe emphasizing using non-lethal weapons. I mean, he had a taser. I don't know why he didn't just use the taser if he really, really wanted to stop the guy.
Because of a
He didn't
wild...
want to run. He didn't want to run.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. He didn't want to run after the guy. Yeah. If you look at him, he's like, crap. Bang, bang, bang. All right, what am I supposed to do? He grabbed my taser. I'm going to walk over there because I don't want to run. I'm going to drop a taser. That's what creeps me. I mean, it creeps me out. It all is terrifying and terrible. But it's just like the mellowness.
No.
Like, if you're afraid for your life, didn't sound it.
Yeah, it didn't look it.
Oh, God, he's all the way over there now.
Yeah, no, that is exactly what I was going to bring up. It is the incredible indifference to Walter Scott's life. Like, you could have run after the guy, you could have tackled him, you could have tasered him, you could have billy clubbed him, you could have done 1,000 things. But to him, Walter Scott's life didn't matter at all. And if you notice at the end of the tape, he handcuffed him as he was bleeding out, as he was dying there. And he didn't call for he said, shots fired. He didn't say, bring an ambulance. Oh my God, bring an ambulance, right? Total indifference to that life. That's not even manslaughter. So just understand the context of, so when there's a movement that says Black Lives Matter, that exists because sometimes guys like Michael Slager thinks that it doesn't matter at all. And maybe Michael Slager's a psychopath, and to him, blackness had nothing to do with it, and he would just murder anybody in the street, shoot him in the back, because no lives matter to him. Well then, at the very least, manslaughter. But yet right now, he's out. Michael Slager is. And that's, that happens in a trial. Sometimes if it's a murder trial, they don't let you out. And sometimes they do let you out. He's a cop, so they let him out. So now he's going to be out for a lot longer if they got to retry him. And we don't know what's going to happen in that. Right? This particular trial has not been declared a mistrial yet as we speak. But the juror went home saying, no, I will not convict him for murder or manslaughter, based on what he said, apparently under any circumstance.
So I just want to say this because I really do believe in seeking solution, because the reality of the matter is that Black people are not going to be part of a mass exodus back to Africa, and the police, law enforcement isn't going anywhere. So like what you were talking about is, the truth of the matter is a lot of cops, they don't get paid a lot of money. They don't get properly trained. They get sent out into these neighborhoods that they're not familiar with. They have to deal with people that they have been programmed to be afraid of and to think, the dehumanization of people of color is something that happens over and over again in the programming that we are constantly faced with. And then you have people who don't have a higher education, they're frustrated, they're broke, they don't get paid a lot of money, they're always in fear for their lives, and they go out into these communities and they have to deal with people that they are not familiar with. And so these are the issues. So how do we get to solutions? And when you talk about properly training officers, talking to your kids and teaching your kids on how to deal with law enforcement. And I don't mean teaching black children. I'm talking about teaching all children, because I've seen some people talk to cops in a way that I'm like, damn, I don't have the balls to do that. And I'm a grown up and I come from the gutter and I won't talk to a cop like that. But I just think that we have to focus, because like you said something at the beginning that really resonated about us jumping down each other's throat, and we're not getting anywhere with that. But
That's right.
At some point, we're going to have some sort of, we don't have to have a sit down, because this is getting worse. And I don't know if it's because the internet is exposing it or because it's getting worse, but it feels like it's getting worse.
We need independent media to make sure that we hold corporate media accountable. The people that can make that happen is you. You make the Young Turks possible. tytnetwork.com/join. Join us. Be the revolution.